I've been asked if I can make the speech on behalf of Frank. This is Frank's recollection of Paul and their early lives. When you're born close between two siblings, it's worth thinking about their different characteristics, which caused you love and respect them all over the many years. Joe was relatively easy, since we were altar boys at school together, and we spent our time in junior school, then 7 years at senior school, where we had many common friends, played rugby in the same team. A couple of seasons at Butlins, before relaxing into the gentle game of golf. Other than Butlins, I didn't share much relationship with Paul, so I had to dig deeper into my fading memory bank to make any judgments. I was born in Hartington Road, Paul in Woodcroft Road, but my earliest childhood memories go back to our beautiful 153. My earliest remembrance of Paul was when I was at St. Teresa's Infants, and I recall Paul walking back to 153 from the Strand shops. I was probably 6, possibly 5, so Paul was either 4 or 3, and he'd gone to buy potatoes for our mother. But the canvas bag was so heavy for him, so he trailed it behind him, and all I can recall was our precious spuds rolling down, putting up.
Don't shake because it's ruining the camera.
The shops were at least 400 yards from our home, yet he was trusted to do the job. So reliable and
Lean on you.
were my first clues of his inner
me.
character. Paul loved all sports and was an excellent athlete. We had many a thrilling test match series on the side entry of our house over the years, where ownership of the bat and ball probably meant I got the upper hand. My next vivid memory revolves around his energy and willingness. He had just got back from a lightning visit to the Strand. How Joe and I were delighted we had to travel a couple of miles to school, and Ma asked him to go again because she'd forgotten something. The now familiar phrase of "R.A. Ma" echoed round the house, and in classic style our lovely mother said, "Do it to get Grandad Lambert out of purgatory." Paul's equal response was, "But I got him out last year." Paul got Grandad out of purgatory so many times that if he isn't on God's right hand at the moment, he's definitely on the top table. We often joked amongst ourselves about Paul's speed and willingness, imagining him coming back into the house only to hear Ma sing, "And I also needed a tin of peas, a quarter of boiled ham," etc. Paul was about 11 or 12 at this stage, and soon had his paper round, which meant he pretty well purchased his own clothes from then onwards. So hard work, independence could now be added to the reliability and willingness as part of his basic character. Paul left school at 15 and became an apprentice slaughterman at the Stanley Abattoir. This was grueling and demanding work for anyone, but he stuck to it and never, to our knowledge, ever shirked his commitment. I recall another moment like with Paul, quite apart from our love of sport and being in the papers and doing paper boys at the same time. We were the only members of our family to serve in the army, spending time in Germany to help keep the post-war peace, long before Macron and the European Union imagined that it all started with them. But as you'll lay off Brexit, you'll be pleased to hear. Ma and I spent 11 years away from 153, but we were lucky when one leave corresponded with Paul and Silla's wedding, and what a delightful combination that has proved to be. Both share the same qualities of humour and kindness that we all wished we had. During 1974, when our Nick was born, we lived next door to Paul and Silla and their children, Paula and James, were 2 and 1 years old respectively. They have developed into fine adults who would have expected to give the qualities of their parents. The final clincher in defining Paul as a person was a quotation I recall from Mahatma Gandhi, the great Indian, prior to his country's independence in 1947, was asked what he thought of Christianity. The great man replied, I love it, but why can't I see Christ in Christmas? We've all met people who are actually very good people who go to church maybe once, do holy things maybe once a week, but wouldn't do any Christian act for the following 167 hours that were left. Well, the great man never met the man I'm proud to call my brother. It would have been difficult though, as he was assassinated when Paul was only 8, and he was busy getting Grandad out of purgatory. So when you mix reliability, willingness, independence, hard work, and the ability to reflect Christ in your daily task, you have gone one hell of a fine fellow. We are lucky to know such a good-natured person as our Paul, and I hope that he has a wonderful day today.
Right, I just want to say to Paul, this is from the family, plus sex friend Margaret as well. Just forget to go into enjoy.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think Paul would like to say a few words.
Seeing as I came
Oh,
all
Paul.
this way.
Why not?
You know I like to talk.
Why not?
So what can I say about Paul Lambert? Well, as he turns 80 today, I thought I might take this opportunity to tell you 80 random facts about Paul Lambert that you might
good
not
enough film for
know.
that.
But don't worry, the speech is not as long as it sounds. But I've just got back from Hong Kong a bit jet lagged, so if I do fall asleep halfway through, someone feel free to read this on my behalf. And if anyone else falls asleep during the speech, don't worry, I will email it to you. Because you have no excuse, you will be 80 facts the wiser about my dad.
Oh my God.
Before the end of the day, so here we go. So some of this has already been mentioned, but anyway, Dad was born the 5th out of 9 children to Veronica and Joseph Lambert on the 17th of May 1939 at home in Woodcroft Road in Liverpool. It was just a few short months before the outbreak of World War II. See, that was 5 facts already, so don't panic. And it's actually really hard now for me and my kids to even imagine Grandad's childhood. Rationing, air raids and all that, it's the stuff of history books. It's amazing actually to think back then, when my dad was born, King George VI was on the throne. There was no NHS, no colour TVs, no computers, no mobile phones, outdoor toilets, no central heating, no double glazing. And Britain wasn't even part of the EU, so nobody had even heard of Brexit. Good times, don't you think?
Yeah.
Good times. So not long after my dad was born, the family moved out of the city centre to escape the bombs of World War II, and they moved to the leafy suburbs of Norris Green. And my dad found himself quickly then in the middle of 9 children. He's got 2 older sisters, 2 older brothers, 2 younger sisters and 2 younger brothers. Now, middle children do have a reputation for being quite a handful. They're often attention seekers, vying for acknowledgement. They're always hungry for praise. They want everybody's attention. But I can honestly say that my dad has totally broken that stereotype. And I think he's probably one of the most patient, caring, kind and humble and probably least attention-seeking people that I've ever met. That is until he turned 78 and started to learn the ukulele. And now he has turned into an attention-seeking junkie. He will whip out his instruments at any opportunity. Vying for acknowledgement and he's so hungry for praise.
The camera's shaking now.
I don't think I can. We're now to fact 21. Dad was about 6 years old when he spent, I think it was about 6 weeks, was it, in what was described as a convalescent home. Now, what was the cause of his convalescence? Well, was it TB, pneumonia? No, it transpires that Nana, his mum, was expecting Uncle Jim at the time, and she needed a bit of peace and quiet to rest. Now, aunties Ronnie and Eileen were considered useful enough to be allowed to stay at home, but Dad, Joe and Frank were considered a hindrance, so they were sent off to a children's home where they were looked after by the Mollys, the Sheilas, Sister Bendeezy, is it Dad? And the Jolly Old Matron too, which became a song that the kids in the children's home made this song up to help them through the dark, gloomy nights in this orphanage. And anyway, one of my very earliest childhood memories is being pushed in our big Silver Cross pram through Sefton Park while my dad sang this convalescent home song. Anyway, one day I was about 15 months old. My mum tells me that my dad started to sing and I sang the song back to him. And he was just like amazed. I was only a baby. And I think that's when he realised that he would no longer be able to get a word in his own house. That's a fact, 31. So Dad left school at 15 and he went to work as a slaughterman in the abattoir. Now, it's not the most glamorous of jobs, but he did get cheap or free meat, so the family always had a good meal or two, didn't they? And lugging all those huge carcasses of meat around was also a really good workout. So apparently Dad ended up with muscles on his muscles. But it wasn't without incident, because he did manage to shoot himself with an animal stun gun, and he ended up in hospital. Before he could get into more trouble, luckily the army stepped in and they recruited him for national service. And he does remain today the youngest member of the Lamlett family to have been in the military. Now, the army, having heard about the gun incident, they decided to train him as a cook. Now, they say an army marches on its stomach, so he was responsible for feeding all these hungry bellies of the Army Corps in Lincolnshire and in Germany, where he was stationed, so it was a big responsibility. Now, the problem in those days was you couldn't get real eggs. I don't know why, they must have been scarce or expensive. So the army, in their wisdom, used to use these tins of powdered egg instead. Now, powdered egg apparently is really disgusting and it tastes horrible, and all the soldiers would complain. So not to be deterred, my dad would get a real egg, squash it up and put a little bit of eggshell into anything that he was cooking. So when they were sitting there in the mess, one of the soldiers would go, "Oh God, it's powdered egg again." And then another one would go, "Hang on, there's a bit of eggshell, it mustn't be powdered egg." So he would fool them into thinking that they'd been eating real egg. But it is a clever trick, but what it just confirmed, Dad, is it was real egg. They thought it was real egg. So why did it taste so bad? Must have been a bad cook. So you didn't think that was true, did you? But I have to say, joking aside, my dad is, in fact, a very good cook. He does a very mean roast dinner, a cracking fry-up, and a really good curry, which is a skill that I wish I had inherited from him, but unfortunately I didn't, did I, Lucy? Sorry, I'm terrible. And I've never quite been able to work out, seeing as eggs, he didn't have eggs, where he got that initial egg to start with, but the eggshell and things, I've never managed to work that one out.
Only selected people have
Okay. Now we're on to fact 41. And this is that after the army, my dad did a stint in Butlins in Filey, and having heard about his cooking skills, Butlins decided to make him a waiter. So he actually wanted to be a redcoat, but sadly Mrs. Cathcart said no. So after a summer season, he found himself back in the abattoir, and in one fateful evening in the Four Winds nightclub, I love that name, he met the lovely Cilla Hawley. 6 months later, they were engaged, and 6 months after that, on the 6th of June 1970, they were married. Then 9 months later, and then 2 years after that, our Jim arrived. Now, sadly, our Jim turned out to be a bit of a disappointment to me, Dad. He wasn't like the other boys. He wasn't like cousins Joe, John, Nicholas. And my dad had a sneaking suspicion that he was hiding a secret. Now, finally, Jim plucked up the courage to confess, and in a heartfelt exchange, he came out. What was his secret? He was a Liverpool fan. So all Dad's hopes of raising an Etonian were dashed. Now, I don't
music
honestly
and
think
dance,
Dad's ever really recovered from that, and the shame and the embarrassment
You're the only
still
one in the world,
haunts him.
Paula.
I know, thank you. Now I remember Dad saying to me that when he was growing up, his dad said the only things that he would leave him, I think there was no money, he said the only things that he would leave him would be his religion, his politics and his football team. Now I know my dad would have liked to leave that to Jim, but Jim's just rubbed salt in the wounds one by one. He voted Lib Dem and then he came out as an atheist. So my dad just doesn't know what he's done wrong. So as I said, my first memories of my dad are very much linked to Sefton Park when we lived in Ferndale. And he'd get back off a night shift, and by now he'd left the abattoir and he's working for British Leyland. And he'd have his breakfast, and then he'd take me for a morning walk around the park. And my grandma, my mum's mum, lived with us at that time. Anyway, one day I remember walking through the park, I was sitting in the pram, and then my dad stopped to have a wee behind a tree. And when we got home, I announced it to the house, and I said, "My dad had a wee behind." And my dad and grandma was like, "Oh, he didn't." My dad said, "He did." "I didn't." And then I saw him saying to him, "He did." "I did." "She's right." So I think he always knew then that his secrets were not safe with me. Another memory that I've got from that time is people knocking on the door quite regularly to pay their Tom Time money. Does anybody remember that? At any given day or night, the bell would ring and my dad would get out this little black book and a tin, and money would change hands. And I don't think I really understood what it was all about until I was watching EastEnders and Arthur stole the Christmas Club money. And then I realised my dad was Arthur. Not that he stole anybody's money, but then I understood what all those cash transactions in the middle of, of the afternoon were all about. Another memory I've got from my childhood is when Dad used to say to me something like, "Can you do the dishes or set the table or whatever?" And I was just a lazy wee shite, so I'd just say no and complain. And he'd always say to me, "By the time our Ronnie was your age, she was running this house, she'd be cooking the meals, doing the ironing, she'd be up and down to Broadway and the Strand for the messages." And that's me, man. And that's you. To let you know. And I just wanted to myself, well, bully for Auntie Ronnie. I'd sneak off back to bed. But my dad was always up with the lark, and he's so cheerful in the morning. And of course, never late for anything. Unfortunately, that's another thing that I didn't inherit from my dad. I'm late for everything and I can't get up in the morning. But I've got painful memories of waking up as a teenager, maybe occasionally with a bit of a hangover, to hear him singing The Crystal Chandeliers and Like a Violin at the top of his voice while doing it. And I'm sure half the street could hear him. But my dad, who's a bit deaf, didn't have any idea how loud he was. Which brings me on to his deaf money. Now this was compensation from the army for causing hearing loss, as they didn't issue protective earplugs while my dad was the one cracking the eggs in the barracks. So anyway, they were going to give out this money to people who'd been deaf as because of the army. So my mum had so many ideas about what she was going to do with this money, from new carpets to an extension. Sadly, all her suggestions fell on deaf ears. I'm not sure what happened to that claim in the end. Have you heard anything, Dad?
You benefited from it.
Dad seemed to spend a lot of my childhood on strike or laid off when he worked for British Leyland, which meant he also ended up working for the bar in St Andrew's Club to make ends meet, where Jim and I worked later on when we were older as well. Eventually, the wheels fell off the British car industry and my dad was made redundant, so he went to work for the Haraeus with Uncle Joe. Now, Brother Jim and I saw the word Haraeus written down and we were convinced it said hairy arse. So we were like, what's he doing there? Anyway, my dad's new job meant he had to commute to Walton from Walton to Bromley. So he decided he was going to learn to drive and buy a car. Now, Dad famously teases me because he taught me to drive about how bloody hopeless I was when I was learning to drive. But very sadly, that is one of the things I did inherit from you, Dad, because you were not a natural behind the wheel, Dad. It took him 3 tries and an awful lot of angst before he eventually passed his driving test. And when he eventually passed, he set up this carpool lift system where all the friends, or anybody you knew in Walton who had to go to the dark side of the Wirral every morning would all share lifts. Anyway, Heraeus, Dad is in charge of quality control for the silica, glass and fibre optics. And it's a job that his eye for detail, his patience, and his very analytical and thorough nature were ideally suited. Again, none of those amazing admiral qualities did he pass on to me. But his colleagues were never happy because he'd have to stamp reject on their work. And they used to sing behind his back. There was a song that was around in the 80s and 90s. It's got to be perfect. And they would sing that behind me, Dad. Anyway, 17 years he was perfect, but then there was another redundancy, unfortunately. And at this point, he was then 63 years old, so he decided to combine his hobby of walking with a job of meter reading. Well, it kept him off the streets, didn't it? But fitness has always been a big thing for me, Dad. He's always loved long walks, as I can confirm from those early morning strolls around Sefton Park. And he's loved playing football and cricket. He loved to swim. He competed and won in hurdles in the army. And then he took up running in later life, and he's actually amassed loads of medals. He even won money at the grand old age of 67 for being the fastest veteran over 65 in the Liverpool 10K. So we can officially call him a professional runner. Even now at 80, he still goes to the gym 3 times a week and he walks whenever he can. So he's a massive inspiration to Jim and I, and we are really proud of his determination to keep himself fit and well. Now, when my dad was young, he didn't travel very much, but over the years, especially since Jim and I moved to Hong Kong, he's been very adventurous and he's visited a rather impressive list of places. It includes Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, Bangkok, Hua Hin and Phuket in Thailand. I think you guys were on that Phuket trip, weren't you? He's been to Finnish Lapland, Kuala Lumpur and Cherating in Malaysia, China, Hong Kong, Macau, Singapore, New York, Chicago, Memphis and Graceland, Barcelona, Benidorm and Mallorca, Switzerland, Italy, France, Germany, Dublin, where he ended up naked locked outside of his hotel room.
Completely new.
Truth coming out
Madeira,
now.
Portugal, Morocco, Tunisia, Bruges, the Isle of Man and Rhyl. So there are 79 facts that you may or may not have known about my dad. Now the last fact is that number 80 is that Paul Lambert is the loveliest man and the most wonderful dad in the whole world. Like his colleagues in Heriarsh used to say, it has to be perfect. And I'm incredibly lucky to have had an absolutely perfect dad. Now I know I've hardly been a perfect daughter, but if it is any consolation, Dad, karma has bitten me in the bottom. And I'm now raising 3 completely crazy kids, including Lucy, who is not only a stereotypical redhead, but also she is a stereotypical middle child, in every sense of the word. She even plays the ukulele just like her granddad. And her goal in life is to wind me up and keep me on my toes, just like I did with you, Dad. So I have got my comeuppance. Anyway, I'd just like to raise a drink and say, thank you, Dad.
Support live music tonight.
It's all your fault.
You're going to see madness. Well, this will be madness. So we're just going to play a couple of other songs. I've never played with my granddaughter before. It's a great honour for me. So we're just going to start off with one you may, I'm sure you all know, is one of... Ready, Lou?
Okay.
Goodbye, Joe.
Ah.
Yeah. Goodbye, Joe. We gotta go. Me, oh, my, oh. We gotta go home. We go down the bayou. Oh, my Joe, sweetest one. Me, oh, my, oh. Son of a gun, we're having fun on the bayou. Jumbo wild, what is my baby gumbo?
Oh, remember.
Cause tonight I'm gonna see my Jeremy O. Kick guitar with the jar and B.A.O. Son of a gun, we're having fun on the bayou. Cheap-o-ups, fontanettes, places are buzzing. Kinfolk can't see my job by the dozen. Dressed in style, go on wild, me oh my oh. Son of a gun, we're having fun on the bayou. Jumbo high, holding fire, feeling gumbo. Cause tonight I'm gonna see cherry-o. Big guitar, flip jar and big ale. Some of the gunmen having fun on the bayou. Some of the gunmen having fun on the bayou.
Captain Brown's favourite tune.
You know it's almost.
In the town where I was born lived a man who sailed the sea, and he told us of his life in the land of submarines. So we sailed the sea of songs till we found the sea of green, and we lifted up the waves in a yellow submarine. We all live in a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine. We all live in a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine. And our friends are all aboard. All aboard. Many of them live next door. Like Jack Paul. We all live in a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine. We all live in a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine. We all live in a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine. We all live in a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine.
Double word.
You never
Notice
walk
how the
alone.
one was vanished. Where's she gone?
Gone to the loo. She said,
Get her earplugs in.